Hey guys, welcome back to our Bedtime History Corner. If you enjoy winding down with gentle stories, please subscribe, like, and turn on notifications so you never miss a calm night. Before we begin, drop a comment with your city and the current time. I'd love to see where and when you're listening. Dim the lights, let the hum of the room settle around you, and take a slow breath as we drift into tonight's quiet story. Tonight we glide to a small village in Feudal Japan, where paddies darken to indigo and a wooden water wheel ticks like a slow heartbeat. We won't hurry. We'll notice the things that make a long day softer: cool mud on the hands, cedar buckets easing to rest, a family fire laid to embers. The past can be harsh in the daylight, taxes, ledgers, and tired backs, yet at night the world thins to breath, to straw, to starlight over roofs. Let's move together at an easy pace, letting sentences open like lanterns, one by one, until the village settles around us and the mind loosens its grip. Twilight drapes itself over the paddies in an indigo hush, and the last chorus of frogs sets a pulse beneath the murmuring irrigation channels. You crouch on the embankment with palms against cool mud, feeling the day's heat retreat through your fingertips while rice blades shimmer in thin sheets of reflected sky. Fireflies rise like embers released from an unseen hearth, their steady twinkling pacing your breathing, slowing each inhale until your shoulders release. Beyond the levee, the village roofs gather dusk as if they have been practicing for this precise softness since the first planting. The air tastes of damp straw and wood smoke, and each flavor gives your body permission to quiet the muscles that ached all day. A creak from the water wheel guides your attention to the drainage canal where cedar buckets sway patiently from the beam. You lift one, feeling the groove carved by generations of hands, and tip the remaining water back into the channel so the night watch finds it ready. The action is small, but in it you hear the voice of your grandmother reminding you that every tool must sleep as carefully as the people relying on it. Moist earth breathes up a cool sweetness. The sky deepens to cobalt. The first star glints between the thatch ridges. And you note how the light catches on the bundled rice owed to the daimyo, stacked under the granary eaves, waiting for tomorrow's carts. In the distance, the village headman stands with his hands tucked into his sleeves, silhouette steady beside the granary door. His gaze never startles you. He watches the horizon more than your family, yet you feel his awareness brushing your back like a breeze. Tonight he hums a temple hymn under his breath, the tune barely above the crickets. You have learned to read his mood by its pace. A slow chant means the ledger's balanced, that every sack of rice was measured without dispute, that the tax inspector will not need to return. You let the sound soak into you, grateful for the promise of a peaceful night, even as your mind flips through lists of unthreshed bundles still to be tied. Daylight hours stretch in memory like farmlands under midsummer sun. You remember kneeling knee-deep in the flooded paddy, guiding seedlings into place while the midday heat quivered. Your wrists still carry the impressions of hemp cords used to bind seedlings, in easy-to-count sheaves, cords your father twisted during last winter's long evenings. The rhythm of planting press, smooth, release remains inside your muscles, echoing with every breath you take now. Cranes have finally fallen silent, and the remaining birds fold wings with practiced precision, leaving the paddies to night insects and the furtive splash of koi in the irrigation pond. Leaning back against a woven basket, the same basket that traveled the ridge roads when Toyotomi Hideyoshi's officials surveyed these fields, counting paddies and measuring yields before your grandparents built the present house you breathe in the night. The story returns often, told in low tones beside the hearth. How the surveyors ran cords across the soil, how the village elders chewed their words before responding, knowing that every measurement would tie your lineage tighter to this place. Thinking on it now, you feel both anchored and sheltered. The soil remembers your palm just as surely as it remembers their footsteps, and the weight of centuries sits gently on your shoulder like a blanket rather than a shackle tonight. A breeze slips from the mountain pass carrying resin from pine groves and whispers of the temple bell that will soon announce evening prayers. You follow the breeze through the village lanes to your doorway. Tatami waits inside, warm with the day's stored sun, and the scent of freshly steamed millet rises from a covered pot. Your mother tends the fire with bamboo tongs, their tips ash-darkened. She smiles without words, and you understand in that glance that the household balance holds steady. No quarrel with neighbors, no missing tools, no unexpected visitor seeking rice or rope. Stepping through the lintel, you let sandals rest on the stones and rinse your hands in water cooled by a clay jar. The simple ritual resets each sinew. Your little brother snores softly near the brazier, a folded cloth over his eyes to keep firelight from disturbing his dreams. You watch the rise and fall of his breathing, as if you could learn tranquility merely by paying attention. Outside, twilight ripens into night. Inside, the slow tick of bamboo dripping into a basin marks time more gently than any bell. Grain sacks bound for the tax quota line the wall, each stamped with ink characters naming your household and the amount pledged. You trail fingertips over the drying ink, feel the faint resistance where brush bristles tugged across canvas. The sacks look like docile animals, yet each contains the labor of weeks, the exchange that keeps your family acknowledged by the daimyo and safe from punishment. You remind yourself, as your father always does, that rice paid in full is the price of sleeping without a tremor of fear. The thought is not grim, it is simply the pattern of life as regular as the 5 strokes of the post drum recorded in the headman's ledger. A kettle clicks softly, announcing that the evening tea of roasted barley is ready. You pour the first cup for the household altar, watching the steam curl around the memorial tablets. The aroma mingles with incense coiling upwards, weaving ancestral presence into the night air. You whisper a greeting to the generations who endured before you, and the words feel like stepping stones across a quiet stream. You allow the warmth to spread through your chest, loosening any final knots left by the day's labor. When the cup passes back to you, you sip slowly, noticing the faint metallic hint from the iron kettle, the sweetness of barley released by long roasting. Your mind travels the village without leaving the mat. The neighbor's baby breathing in soft huffs, the headman's wife folding ledger cloths, the temple caretaker locking the gate. Every household slides into night routines, each one part of the same woven mat of obligation and comfort. You understand that hardship is shared, but tonight you also feel the shared cushion of familiarity, the way voices lower as stars appear. Your father clears his throat and recounts a favorite tale about his apprenticeship under a carpenter who built floodgates along the Kiso River. The story meanders like the water it describes, touching on the feel of cedar planks under cold hands, the way river fog muffled shouts, the satisfaction of seeing water obey wooden barriers. You listen intently, gathering quiet lessons about patience, about shaping stubborn elements without force. The narrative slows everyone's breathing, anchoring imagination in the gentle sway of barges and the creak of ropes. Outside, a fox yips near the bamboo grove. The sound might startle in harsher times, yet tonight it feels like part of the night's score, balanced between distance and solace. You picture the fox trotting along the levee in search of frogs, its paws leaving temporary impressions that the morning dew will erase. The thought reminds you that even fleeting marks matter. Your day's labor may wash away, yet its effect lingers in the rice stacked safely indoors. Before rising, you unroll a small straw mat and sit in seiza, facing the sliding door. Through the paper screen, the moon creates a pale rectangle of light. You place your palms together and whisper gratitude for tools that did not break, for fingers that still follow your commands, for the steady arc of the seasons. The prayer lasts only a handful of breaths, yet it settles any restless corners of your heart, creating space for rest to enter. A final glance upward reveals Orion's belt edging above the mountains. You recall the name your mother taught you, Tsuzuki Boshi, the beads on a string guiding farmers through winter nights. You whisper the stars' names like old friends, letting their distant shimmer remind you that cycles continue beyond the reach of taxes and toil. The constellations steady your mind, aligning your thoughts with the heavens before you turn towards sleep. Before retreating indoors, you lay your palm on the veranda post where generations have smoothed the wood. The grain feels warm despite the night air, holding the day's stored sun. You whisper a quiet promise to keep tending both house and field with the same patience your elders taught you. A final step takes you outside again, onto the veranda, where night air brushes your face. Moonlight splashes silver across the paddies, outlining the narrow ridges you will tread at dawn. You know the mud will cling to your calves tomorrow, that the sun will rise early and expect you to bow to fields and family. For now, however, you stand and breathe between the croaks of frogs, letting serenity sink deep. The village watch calls the hour, and you answer in silence, acknowledging that you are part of this gentle guard. Sleep sidles close, and you carry it inside like a lantern protected from the wind. Lantern light spills from the headman's storehouse like a careful invitation, and you follow the low murmur of voices along the packed earth lane. The moon has climbed higher, painting the thatch ridges with pewter, yet inside the storehouse the world turns amber. You kneel on the woven mat alongside neighbors, palms pressed to thighs, and inhale the faint scent of ink mixed with roasted tea. Each breath steadies your heartbeat, slowing it to match the methodical brushstrokes that will determine how much rice your household surrenders before dawn. The clerk, a man whose shoulders have rounded from years bent over ledgers, lifts his brush and moistens it lightly at the inkstone. He moves with a surprising grace, sleeves tied back, fingers speckled with carbon smudges. A single paper screen keeps the night wind from disturbing the tallies, and the flickering flame paints his shadow long across the tatami. You study the way he pauses before each character, confirming figures murmured by the headman. There is comfort in his precision, even though every stroke represents grain you coaxed from the earth with aching calves. Names ripple along the ledger like a slow stream. Hara, Watanabe, Ogawa, each followed by meticulous numerals specifying koku and tu, the measures of rice due. When your household name arrives, the room shifts imperceptibly. You bow deeper, forehead almost to floor, finding the rhythm of respect as natural as breathing. The clerk recites your pledged amount, a number you already know by heart. Still, the confirmation makes the obligation solid, as tangible as the sacks leaning against your wall. A quiver passes through your stomach, then softens. You accept the tally because your family prepared faithfully. The headman unfurls a narrow map produced during the last Kenchi land survey, edges creased from repeated handling. Thin ink lines delineate paddies like veins across a leaf, and small red marks note the fertility of each plot. He speaks quietly about the most recent adjustments, how a corner of field lost productivity after a pest outbreak, how another gained value thanks to careful canal dredging. You feel pride when he mentions your family's patient labor clearing silt. His voice carries no flourish, only the steady cadence of stewardship learned across decades. As calculations continue, you allow your senses to wander. A kettle simmers near the brazier, releasing roasted barley aroma. The clerk's assistant turns pages with deliberate care to avoid tearing the thin paper. Outside, the watchman taps his staff against the post at regular intervals, a heartbeat for the village. These sounds weave together, forming a lullaby of duty. You realize that even this accounting ritual has its own gentle music, one you have known since childhood nights when you drowsed against your mother's shoulder while she awaited the family tally. When disputes arise, small discrepancies about shared irrigation or lost bushels, voices remain low. The headman listens, eyes narrowed with concentration, then nods toward the Goningumi captains to verify. You respect the mutual responsibility system, even when it weighs heavy. Tonight it feels like a woven rope supporting each household, keeping the community from slipping into discord. Your neighbor admits that floodwater ruined a corner of his field. Without fanfare, the clerk adjusts the account, spreading the loss across the group per the agreement. Your chest loosens, grateful that compassion can exist even inside tax records. The clerk introduces a new note for the record, mention of the daimyo's latest directive to divert a portion of surplus rice toward Edo, where the lord prepares for his next Sankin Kotai journey. The name Edo drifts through the room like incense, far away yet influential. You picture the Lord's retainers pacing castle corridors, oblivious to the midnight arithmetic in this village. Still, the order matters, adjusting how much grain remains for the coming winter. You silently resolve to stretch millet and sweet potatoes further, to weave any cloth you can sell in the castle town so your household need not lean too hard on neighbors. As the meeting draws toward its midpoint, the clerk invites the village monk to read a short passage blessing fair measure. The monk's voice floats, as gentle as falling ash. He reminds everyone that rice counts both nourish bodies and bind community, and that honesty tonight ensures protection tomorrow. You imagine the words settling on each ledger page like thin snow, preserving the ink from smearing. The chanting slows your breathing again, and you picture your ancestors seated behind you, calm and approving. After your tally is confirmed, you remain seated to assist the next household, noting whether the headman needs an extra hand weighing smaller bundles. You hold the scale steady, feeling its bamboo beam flex subtly under the grain's heaviness. The tactile sensation grounds you, drawing your awareness from abstract numbers back to the substance of the rice. The kernels spill like polished moons into measuring boxes, and you whisper a wish that each grain finds its way to nourish, rather than disappear into damp storage. During a lull, the clerk unfolds a packet of old receipts, parchment edges frayed. He shows the younger farmers how previous generations recorded drought relief, pointing to ink smudges where nervous hands once trembled. You trace the faded characters, sensing ghosts of worry and relief mingling on the page. The clerk explains that such records safeguard the village, proving diligence when higher officials question loyalty. The history lesson steadies your resolve, reminding you that tonight's vigil joins a long chain of careful accounting. The headman's wife appears briefly with a tray of salted radish and warm tea. She moves silently, replenishing cups, settling a shawl over an elder's shoulders. Her presence adds a domestic tenderness to the formal proceedings. You accept a slice of radish, its sharpness jolting your tongue awake, and appreciate the way care seeps in through small gestures even within bureaucratic walls. It feels like an unspoken promise that no one sits in this room alone. After refreshments, the clerk invites you to copy a summary of the night's totals onto a second ledger destined for the domain office. Your brush hesitates at first, then finds steady rhythm as you write names and numbers with deliberate strokes. Each character must be precise. A stray line could alter obligations. The responsibility humbles you, yet it also empowers you to witness your community's labor transformed into formal record. The headman reviews your copy, nodding approval. He mentions that literacy has grown since his youth, crediting temple schools and traveling teachers. His words prompt quiet pride. Education becomes another tool peasants wield, subtle yet potent. You recall evenings spent tracing syllables by firelight, grateful now that calloused fingers can also command ink. By the time the final name is called, the lanterns burn low. The clerk dries his brush, counts the pages once more, and binds the ledger with cloth strips dyed the color of chestnuts. He thanks everyone for their patience, voice hoarse yet kind. You rise on stiff knees, bowing to the record keepers and to the neighbors whose fortunes are tied to yours. The door slides open, releasing the stored warmth into the night's cool breath. Outside, the moon tilts toward the west, and the road home shines pale. Before leaving, you watch the clerk place the ledger inside a cedar chest lined with rice straw to guard against moisture. He seals it with a wax stamp emblazoned with the domain crest, then hands the key to the headman. The ritual feels almost sacred, like closing a sutra after evening chanting. You absorb the image, knowing it will comfort you during lean days when questions about fairness arise. As you step outside, the clerk catches up to you and quietly thanks the village for maintaining orderly records. He admits that some domains wrestle with falsified tallies, and your diligence protects not only your households, but his own reputation. The unexpected gratitude warms you against the chill. Lantern glow trails your slow steps home, ledger calm nestled in your chest like a folded paper charm. The obligations remain heavy, yet you feel lighter for having witnessed them accounted with care. When you reach your doorway, the night has deepened, but sleep waits ready. You tuck blankets around your brother, set the ink-stained cloth aside to be washed tomorrow, and allow your mind to empty like a rice scoop at the end of a long day. The ledger's hum settles into your heartbeat, and you drift toward rest, knowing the counts are true. Morning arrives with thin mist curling through the lanes. You return to the storehouse with the headman to copy the previous night's totals onto slender bamboo tags. Each tag slips into a slot on the supply rack, allowing even sleepy farmers to read their obligations at a glance. The headman chuckles softly when one of the tags sticks. He oils the groove with a fingertip, muttering that records should glide like water through a canal. Women from neighboring households gather to brew barley tea for anyone delivering their dues. You join them briefly, ladling steaming cups while reciting the figures aloud, so no one mishears their quota. The repetition turns the numbers into a chant that steadies the air. Between recitations, you notice how morning light paints golden bands across the ledger chest, as if acknowledging the night's meticulous work. Before the sun climbs high, messengers set out toward outlying hamlets with copies of the tallies. You tuck a folded sheet into your sash as well, planning to review it with elders who could not attend. The paper rustles against your side, a papery heartbeat reminding you that clarity is a kindness. Only then do you allow yourself a bowl of rice gruel, savoring the way warm grains relax the tight knot that recording always leaves between your shoulders. Night thickens, yet within the courtyard of the Nanushi's home, 5 households gather under the lean-to roof. Oil lamps nest in carved turnip shells, their flames steady inside small hollows that glow like sleepy moons. You sit with your knees folded to the side, palms resting lightly on your thighs while the hum of crickets threads between each quiet voice. The Goningumi meeting always begins with silence, the shared breath reminding everyone that each family draws air from the same fields and shares consequences when one falters. Beyond the courtyard, autumn grasses rustle against the fence, their dry whispering adding texture to the hushed gathering. The scent of cedar planks warmed by last afternoon's sun lingers, mixing with faint traces of miso simmering in nearby houses. You note these details the way a scribe notes margins. They frame the seriousness of the night while keeping it grounded in familiar comfort. The Nanushi, appointed to guide your cluster, speaks softly, almost in a whisper that invites listening more than obedience. He thanks the spirits for keeping the canal walls from collapsing during the recent rain, then asks each household to confirm their readiness for tomorrow's delivery. His words carry no force. Instead, they drift like mist, coaxing truth without accusation. You appreciate the care. It allows you to admit small worries without fear of immediate reprimand. When your turn arrives, you report the state of your family's rice sacks, the drying herbs you plan to carry to market, the way your father's back still aches from last week's corvée roadwork. The Nanushi nods, noting each detail with a pebble slid along a small wooden board. The sound of stone against wood is barely audible yet rhythmic, a miniature tally that anchors the conversation. Your neighbors offer remedies for the back pain, recommendations for heating salt in cloth. Their quiet suggestions wrap around you like a shawl. The youngest member present a boy barely taller than the stacked firewood summons courage to confess that he broke a temple lantern while chasing fireflies. Fear flickers in his eyes, but before the shame can root, the Nanushi thanks him for honesty and arranges for families to contribute oil and copper coins to repair it. You feel relief settle over the group. Mistakes confessed tonight will not transform into collective punishment later. The room's warmth grows, fed by mutual trust carefully cultivated by generations. Discussion shifts to the coming checks by domain inspectors. One neighbor shares a rumor that the officials plan to recalibrate the measuring boxes, shaving off the portion that villagers traditionally use to cushion small deficits. The rumor slithers into the circle like a draft, but instead of panicking, the Goningumi members lean closer. Plans form in soft tones, keep a communal reserve hidden in the bamboo grove. Check the cords on the measuring baskets. Ensure everyone understands the new markings carved by the clerk. Listening, you feel the strength of the group as something palpable, a braid woven from caution and care. Stories from older years surface, told by the eldest woman present. She recounts the time when a drought forced your cluster to pull seed rice, rationing handfuls to replant before the rains returned. Her voice trembles but never cracks. Memory blends with gratitude. You picture her younger self, spine straight despite hunger, and you whisper thanks that she is here to remind you resilience lives in shared decisions. The others echo her words, acknowledging debts owed to ancestors both living and departed. The Nanushi produces a small tablet inscribed with the communal oath. Each year, he polishes the wood and re-inks the characters, reinforcing the promise to help one another. Tonight, he invites the youngest adult present you, this season to trace the strokes with a damp cloth. The act feels solemn. As you follow the grooves, you sense the weight of vows carved by generations, and your heartbeat slows to match the steady rhythm of commitment. Before the meeting closes, the Nanushi unrolls a sheet bearing the domain's regulation sumptuary laws, reminding commoners to keep clothing plain, to avoid luxuries that might mimic samurai households. He reads them slowly, not as a threat but as a ritual that keeps everyone aligned. You think about the indigo-dyed coat folded at home, patched neatly to satisfy both law and dignity. The recitation nudges you to mend the sleeve before festival season. Outside the lean-to, night breezes move through the surrounding bamboo, creating a whispering counterpoint to the spoken review of obligations. The sound could be mistaken for gossiping spirits, yet to you it feels like the audible braid of your community, each stalk tapping the next to ensure awareness. Someone chuckles softly at the idea, and the laughter dissolves tension without shattering the hush. Even humor here is gentle, a candle flame shielded by cupped palms. To conclude, the Nanushi produces a small bundle of rice paper slips inscribed with lines from a sutra. Each family draws one, receiving a phrase to ponder during the week. Yours reads, "Water follows the stone that guides it." The metaphor settles into your heart with the weight of dew. You imagine yourself as the stone channeling patience so your household's worries flow around you rather than eroding your center. You tuck the slip into your sleeve, warm against your skin. Before the group disperses, everyone contributes a handful of rice to a small basket designated for emergency aid. The grains patter softly, filling the woven container with shared security. You add your portion, appreciating how the sound echoes the rain you hope will bless the fields come spring. Volunteering to deliver the basket to the temple storehouse at dawn ensures the offering is accounted for among other communal reserves. The responsibility sits comfortably on your shoulders, like a shawl woven from shared trust. The meeting ends with a shared bow toward the direction of the village shrine. No one speaks as you rise. Instead, footsteps on packed earth create a soft percussion guiding everyone home. You glance back once to see the oil lamps extinguished in a single practiced motion, sending the gathering into darkness without fear. The memory of the circle remains luminous, however, lingering behind your eyes as you walk the narrow lane. On the walk back, one neighbor matches your pace and quietly describes how her grandfather once relied on the Goningumi to rebuild a house after lightning struck. The story paints images of neighbors ferrying roof beams on their shoulders, women weaving fresh tatami, children fetching water without being asked. Listening, you picture the village as a body whose limbs move instinctively to protect the whole. The warmth of that image trails you like a cloak. Before parting, the Nanushi presses a small packet of roasted tea into your hand, a token from his own stores. He urges you to brew it on mornings when fatigue clings too tightly. The gesture is modest yet potent. Each leaf carries the reassurance that leadership here means companionship, not distant command. You tuck the packet into your sleeve, feeling its weight as a promise that support stands close. By the time you slip through your doorway, the house is quiet except for the faint rustle of straw mats. You place the sutra slip beside the household altar, resting your palm on the tatami to absorb its warmth. The idea of mutual responsibility no longer feels like a yoke tonight. It rests like a woven rope hammock steady beneath your weight. You sleep knowing that 5 households breathe in rhythm, and that if fear wakes you before dawn, a lamp in the neighboring house will already be lit. Before lying down, you jot a note on a scrap of paper tucked under the incense bowl. Goningumi, steady as autumn moon. It is a message to your future self, in case winter storms fray your resolve. At dawn, you carry the emergency basket to the temple, pausing at each doorstep to confirm nothing more is needed. The act transforms the previous night's promises into tangible comfort. Near midnight, you return to the communal rice barn, drawn by instinct more than obligation. The building exhales a dry, comforting scent: straw, cedar beams, faint traces of smoke where torches have been carried in careful figure eights to ward off damp. Moonlight squeezes through slatted vents, laying silver ladders across stacked grain sacks. You climb the ladder to the upper loft, each rung polished smooth by decades of watchful feet, and settle on a crossbeam to listen. Your grandmother once told you stories of keeping vigil here during the Kyo-ho years, when guards slept with ropes tied to their wrists so any attempted theft would rouse the whole barn. Remembering her courage stirs a protective tenderness inside you. You feel as though her hands still guide yours when you adjust the vent slats. The barn is never truly silent. Rice settles with soft sighs. Mice rustle in the walls before scurrying away from the scent of the village cat. And somewhere a rope creaks as the building shifts with the night's temperature. You know each sound the way sailors know the timbre of wind in sails. When something deviates, your body reacts before your mind does. Tonight, everything falls within the expected rhythm, and the familiarity cradles you. Bold characters on the nearest sacks indicate the domain store, while smaller notes show the amount held in reserve for years when the harvest falters. One corner holds tribute grain destined for Edo, the Lord's crest stamped in vermilion. Another set of sacks carries the seal of the village temple, kept aside for festivals and for feeding the hungry who arrive unannounced. The barn records the community's priorities without ink. The arrangement itself, a sentence speaking of duty, reverence, and mutual aid. A lantern, carefully shielded, illuminates the moisture gauge, a slender rod hung with paper strips. You moisten your finger and touch the paper. It curls only slightly, proof the barn remains dry enough to preserve the grain. Relief courses through you. Moisture means mold, and mold means empty bowls. You whisper a prayer of thanks to the carpenters who raised this structure 3 decades ago, their crossbeams still holding firm against seasonal storms. A cloth glides along the measuring boxes stacked neatly on a shelf, polishing away any stray husks. The boxes bear carved markers, indicating official capacity, yet subtle notches along the base help villagers estimate extra handfuls for emergencies. You smile at the ingenuity, a quiet testament to balancing obedience with practicality. From the loft you can see the iron trap door leading to the granary's lower level. Your father crafted the hinge during a winter when snow kept everyone indoors. The memory warms you. You picture him, younger and laughing, hammering iron beside the hearth while telling tales of the Toyotomi sword hunts that stripped peasants of blades but permitted them to carry work tools. Those edicts still echo here in the barn, where every hook and sickle must be accounted for lest suspicion fall on your village. For a moment you check the bamboo baskets of barley and millet stored for household use. The grains smell nutty, promising more humble meals once the tax rice leaves. You think about the imbalance, the finest rice traveling to the Lord while your family embraces barley porridge thickened with sweet potato. Yet the thought no longer feels bitter. Instead, you draw comfort from the ancestral knowledge of stretching ingredients, from recipes that transform scarcity into warmth. Outside the barn, the night wind stirs the drying racks for persimmons. The fruits sway gently, their sugary aroma filtering through the vent. You imagine offering slices to your siblings tomorrow as a reward for patience. Nearby woven fish traps hang ready. Your uncle will visit the river at first light to catch carp for offering at the shrine. The barn holds more than grain, it holds the promise of meals, offerings, and quiet celebrations. Descending to the main floor, you inspect the rat guards. Copper plates gleam faintly in the lantern glow, a reminder of the community's collective savings spent to protect stores from gnawing teeth. You trace the smooth metal and recall the year when the village petitioned the domain for permission to purchase them, arguing that protecting rice was protecting tribute. The petition succeeded because it aligned with the Lord's interest, yet everyone still celebrates it as a victory for common sense. A sleepy barn cat stretches from atop a pile of dried straw, blinking golden eyes at you before curling back into a watchful loaf. You scratch behind its ears, thanking the silent hunter for the countless raids it has prevented. The cat purrs softly, its vibration humming through the quiet like a contented drum. A logbook rests on a low table, thick paper bound in leather, where the barn watchers record nightly observations. You dip the brush into ink and write a line. Moisture steady, sacks intact, persimmons sweet. The words look simple, but they preserve the night's serenity for whoever reads them tomorrow. You add a small note reminding the next watcher to check the rope ladder that frays near the top. Vigilance thrives on practical kindness. A tiny map showing where additional straw mats are stored joins the logbook, inspired by a traveler who once praised villages that left guidance for strangers. Though outsiders seldom enter, the act of recording makes the barn feel welcoming rather than forbidding. A fellow watcher arrives with a bundle of straw ropes. Together you settle cross-legged on the loft floor, braiding the fibers while sharing tales whispered by grandparents, stories of winters when snow sealed the barn doors and songs were the only warmth. The ropes will secure the shutters during storms, yet the act of weaving them now in calm weather feels like banking serenity for future nights. When the hour changes, you descend to the ground floor and run your hand along the moisture gauge once more. A single drop of condensation glistens at the tip, and you dab it away with a cloth scented faintly of cedar. Attention to such small signs becomes a meditation. With each careful gesture, the barn's heartbeat stays slow and steady. Before returning to your post, you open a small basket containing roasted chestnuts left by the headman's wife. You and your companion eat them in silence, letting the sweet earthiness root you in the present. The snack tastes of gratitude, a reminder that village care reaches even into midnight vigils. A pause lets your hand travel along the barn walls, fingers brushing the joinery where beams interlock without nails. The carpenter's craftsmanship fascinates you, the precision cuts, the way wood swells to tighten joints during humid summers. You imagine the barn breathing alongside you, expanding and contracting as seasons change. Knowing the structure responds to weather comforts you. It feels like a companion adapting quietly to protect what matters. From your perch, you can see faint scratches carved by previous watchmen keeping tally during particularly tense years. Some marks count rat sightings, others map flood levels. You resolve to add a line this year celebrating a pest-free season, balancing the cautionary graffiti with gratitude. Recording joy feels as necessary as recording danger, a reminder to future eyes that hardship was met with victories too. Before leaving, you sit cross-legged on a bale and let your mind wander to the multitude of hands that built, filled, and guarded this barn. You picture women threshing rice with rhythmic swings of flails, children shooing sparrows from new straw roofs, elders murmuring sutras before sealing the first harvest inside. Their efforts ripple through time to support you now. The barn is a chorus of past care, and you feel honored to add your breath to it. When you finally close the heavy door, the latch settles with a satisfying thud. You pause outside, inhaling the night's crispness before turning homeward. The barn stands behind you like a sleeping guardian, its presence reassuring. You know dawn will bring footsteps, carts, and the groaning of wood under loaded sacks. But for this quiet stretch of hours, the grain is safe, and so is your hope. A shooting star streaks above the ridgeline, vanishing before you finish a wish. You whisper gratitude anyway, trusting that the barn heard it on your behalf. Later, you trade shifts with another watcher and sit together outside the barn, backs against the cool wall. He recounts how his father once stored wheat here during a famine, teaching him to stack sacks in crisscross fashion to keep air flowing. You memorize the technique for your own children. Rain threatens in the distance. You smell it before it arrives. Together you adjust the roof shutters, tightening cords so wind cannot pry them open. The teamwork feels like a quiet dance, choreographed by necessity. Before returning home, you leave a small braid of straw at the barn's threshold as a token of thanks. The gesture may be superstition, yet it steadies your heart. Back home, the hearth glows with banked embers, casting a low ochre halo on the walls. You settle cross-legged beside your mother and eldest sister, each of you with a garment stretched taut across your lap. Indigo cloth catches the lamplight, revealing a constellation of patches stitched with care. The night air tastes faintly of soy and miso, remnants of supper, and the warmth on your cheeks slips down to soothe the muscles worked hard in the fields. Dried citrus peels hang from the rafters, perfuming the air with faint sweetness each time the fire crackles. Their scent mingles with the earthy aroma of tatami, forming a fragrance you associate forever with safety. Your mother threads a needle with practiced ease, the silk line glinting like a fine thread of moonlight. She hums a lullaby learned from her own mother, and the melody unspools slowly enough to match the rhythm of each stitch. You join the song quietly, letting the notes settle over the room like dust motes floating in sunbeams. Music keeps the silence from feeling empty, and it guides your hands to move steadily even when your eyes grow heavy. On the floor nearby rests a folded kimono reserved for festival days. Its faded pattern of plum blossoms whispers of seasons when your parents danced at Obon. Sumptuary laws remind you to keep festivities modest. Bright colors are for the samurai class, yet subtle elegance remains possible. Your sister reinforces the collar with extra hemp thread so it survives another year. You marvel at how the garment holds memories of laughter and the scent of incense, even as it insists on practicality. In the corner, your father kneads a warmed cloth filled with salt against his aching back. He winces, then exhales a long breath that softens his features. You offer to take a turn, pressing the cloth gently between his shoulder blades. He smiles, a quiet acknowledgement of your growing strength. He tells a story about serving corvée duty repairing the road to the post station, describing how the stones felt underfoot and how the overseer insisted on straight lines even when the hill curved. The story edges toward humor, and you laugh softly, the sound mingling with the crackle of embers. Your youngest sister sits nearby threading beads made from dried gourd seeds onto a string. She plans to decorate the altar with them, believing the ancestors enjoy small surprises. You help her sort the beads by size, appreciating the patience the task instills. She asks you to recite the ancestors' names as she strings each bead. The ritual turns a simple craft into a whispered roll call of gratitude. Outside, the night clouds shift, letting moonlight spill through the paper screens. Shadows of bamboo leaves sway across the walls, moving in tandem with the wind. The pattern reminds you of fish weaving through water, and you imagine yourself floating alongside them, freed from gravity. The image brings a sense of buoyancy that lightens the heaviness in your limbs. You realize this gentle dreaming is why you cherish these evenings. They allow your mind to wander beyond measured furrows while your hands continue necessary work. Your sister pauses her stitching to share gossip gathered from market day, a peddler selling story scrolls with woodblock prints of distant battles, a merchant boasting of new cotton shipments from Osaka. The news feels far removed from your hearth, yet it sparks curiosity. You picture the prints in your mind, wondering how artists carve such intricate lines. For a moment, the world widens, and you sense your family's place within a vast network of exchanges you cannot always see but often feel. On a low tray, dried persimmon slices and toasted chestnuts rest beside cups of warm amazake. You take a sip. The drink is sweet, thick, and comforting. Its warmth spreads through your belly, and you think about the rice it required, grateful for every kernel saved from tribute to create this small pleasure. Your family shares the snack in companionable silence, the simple act reminding everyone that joy does not need grandeur. Your brother suggests recording new lullabies learned from traveling merchants. You hum a few notes, and your mother encourages you to write the lyrics on scrap paper tomorrow. Preserving songs becomes another stitch in the family's patchwork of resilience. The conversation drifts toward plans for the coming days. You discuss the order in which tools need repair, the timing of temple visits, and the rotation for guarding the irrigation gate. Even mundane details feel gentle in this setting. The hearth's glow softens any edge they might carry. Your mother notes that the sleeves of your work coat require reinforcement before the next round of transplanting. You nod, promising to sew stronger stitches once the current patchwork is complete. On a nearby shelf rests a small wooden box filled with proverb cards. Your sister suggests drawing one to guide tomorrow's thoughts. You slide open the lid, withdraw a card and read aloud. Even the strongest cord is woven from slender threads. The words ripple through the room, eliciting nods. You tuck the card beside the altar so everyone sees it at dawn, confident it will draw smiles when fatigue threatens to fray tempers. A stack of letters tied with twine sits near the altar. They belong to your cousin serving as a foot soldier in the daimyo's retinue, and you reread his recent words by the firelight. He writes about the journey to Edo, the grandeur of the castle, the constant motion demanded by the Sankin Kotai system. He also writes about missing the smell of wet rice fields and the taste of home-brewed miso. You trace the characters with a fingertip, feeling a thread between your hearth and the vast roads beyond. A reply forms in your mind, promising to send dried plums and a scrap of cloth scented with cedar smoke. Even if the letter takes months to travel, you know the gesture will wrap him in homecoming warmth. The thought of your words journeying alongside messengers and merchants makes the world feel both vast and reachable. As the hour grows late, your younger siblings doze, heads resting on folded arms. Their breathing aligns with the crackling fire, creating a gentle rhythm. You drape extra cloth over their shoulders, thankful that tonight the pantry contains enough to nourish them in the morning. You take quiet pride in the incremental care your family extends, like stitches that form a pattern only visible after many nights. Before banking the fire, your mother sprinkles a pinch of salt around the hearth, a simple ward against misfortune. She murmurs a prayer, and you echo it, asking for sturdy health, adequate harvests, and patience to bear the weight of obligations. The embers glow brighter for a moment, then settle as she covers them with ash. The room grows cooler, urging everyone toward bed. She hangs the iron kettle on a wooden peg, letting residual heat dry its surface. You note the care in the gesture. Rusted tools crumble faster than exhausted spirits. Watching her tend to each object reminds you that maintenance is a form of love, silent yet constant. Bedding unfurls across the tatami under your flattened palms. Your muscles, soothed by the evening's companionship, sink gratefully into the woven rush. As you lie back, you feel the faint texture of the mat through your blanket, a reminder that comfort can be both humble and profound. The last thing you hear before sleep claims you is the soft whisper of your mother's needle sliding through cloth, a sound that promises continuity. Earlier you tucked a short line into the household diary, needles sharpened, hearts resting. Writing it felt like sealing the evening's serenity inside paper, ready to be reopened on the next difficult day. A gentle knock interrupts the hush. An elderly neighbor, troubled by sleeplessness, asks if the lullaby can spill into her room. Your mother invites her to sit near the brazier while you fetch a quilt warmed on the rail. Together you hum the tune again, slower this time, until her shoulders settle. She leaves with a pouch of toasted rice to sip later, promising to return the favor with fresh miso when the next batch is ready. A corner of the room becomes a mending schedule notes, pinned in tidy rows to assign each family member a weekly task. Organization glitters quietly like frost on window paper. Sleep thins just before dawn, and a knock at the door summons you to the field sooner than planned. Domain inspectors have arrived at nightfall, preferring to measure paddies under moonlight to catch any hidden buns or unauthorized channels. You wrap a cotton cloak around your shoulders and step into the cool darkness, the air damp with river mist. Lanterns bob ahead like cautious stars, leading you along the embankment toward the flooded terraces. Your mother presses a packet of roasted barley into your hand as you leave, reminding you to nibble when nerves tighten. Her quiet care trails behind you, a warmth you carry through the chill. The inspectors wear dark robes, their sandaled feet barely stirring the mud. One unfurls a measuring cord, braided hemp marked with knots at precise intervals. His assistant records figures on a portable board, brush strokes crisp despite the low light. You watch the cord stretch across your paddy, touching the water's surface lightly as dragonflies skim away. The measuring ritual never stops feeling intimate. It exposes your livelihood to scrutiny with the calm efficiency of a priest counting prayer beads. Quiet instructions drift to your younger cousin shadowing the inspection for the first time: where to stand, when to speak, how to keep anxiety hidden behind respectful nods. Mentoring him distracts you from your own nerves and ensures the next generation understands the choreography of compliance. Beside the headman you stand as he explains the condition of the levees, pointing to sections recently reinforced with woven straw. The inspectors nod, expressionless, yet you sense their approval in the way their shoulders relax. A few questions arise about the changed course of a small irrigation stream. You admit that spring rains forced you to carve a new outlet to save the seedlings. They listen, make a note, and remind you to file a petition for formal approval. Their tone remains neutral, but you breathe easier when they move on without accusation. While they measure, you notice how moonlight turns the water silver, revealing ripples created by carp stirring in the shallows. The scene calms you. Nature ignores the bureaucratic intrusion, continuing its own rhythm. You ground yourself by focusing on sensations: the cool mud squeezing between your toes, the faint rustle of rice leaves brushing against one another, the distant call of an owl. These details tether you to the land, even as outsiders evaluate it. Another inspector kneels to inspect the soil, taking a handful and pressing it between his thumb and forefinger. He comments on the loam's richness, acknowledging the ash you mixed in after burning last year's straw. Pride flickers within you. He then asks to see the tools used for weeding. You produce them swiftly, their edges clean and handles polished by use. He notes their numbers, ensuring no surplus blades exist that might hint at forbidden weapons, a lingering habit from the sword hunts that reshaped village life generations ago. The visit includes an audit of planted acreage. A wooden tablet inscribed with measurements emerges from the inspector's sleeve, and he compares it to the current scene. You realize each paddy functions as an entry in a living ledger, every ridgeline a sentence. The inspector's presence underscores how little room exists for error. Yet, you also recognize that their precision protects against arbitrary taxation. As long as measurements remain accurate, you can plan with certainty. One of the inspectors, perhaps less rigid than the others, asks quietly about the harvest prospects. You describe the pests you have fought, the beneficial frogs encouraged by keeping ditches clean, the careful timing of transplanting. His eyes soften. He mentions that the daimyo's court has debated adjusting quotas after recent weather anomalies, and he encourages the village to submit detailed records. The suggestion feels rare, almost kind, and you store it carefully for discussion at the next Goningumi meeting. Another inspector inspects the buns using a bamboo rod, pressing gently to test for hidden leaks. He invites you to walk beside him, noting that your woven straw reinforcement has tightened since the last inspection. You share the trick your grandmother taught you, soaking straw in ash water before weaving to deter insects. He scribbles the tip in his notebook, promising to pass it along. The exchange surprises you. Knowledge often flows downward, yet tonight it circulates, acknowledging your family's expertise. While waiting for measurements to finish, you notice the reflection of lanterns waver in the paddy. Each flicker mirrors the tremor that had settled in your chest earlier. You breathe deeply, letting the cool air fill your lungs until the tremor subsides. The moon glides from behind a cloud, bathing the field in pale light. For a moment you imagine the water as polished metal, a mirror showing you standing steady despite scrutiny. The vision comforts you more than any spoken reassurance. When the measurements conclude, the inspectors share a pot of tea with the headman beneath a shelter of reeds. You join them, pouring cups with both hands as protocol dictates. The tea tastes slightly bitter, yet it warms your chilled fingers. Conversation shifts from numbers to the state of distant roads, the progress of the daimyo's preparations for alternate attendance, the condition of neighboring villages. You listen, gleaning insights that help you anticipate future demands. One inspector remarks on the craftsmanship of your village's irrigation gates, asking who carved the interlocking joints. Pride rises as you mention your late grandfather, whose skill lives on in the wood. The official nods respectfully, and for a heartbeat, the distance between ruler and ruled narrows, bridged by appreciation of handiwork. They gift the headman a packet of incense sticks as token of goodwill, asking that the temple monks pray for continued stability. The gesture surprises you. Offerings usually travel the other way. You tuck away the moment, proof that respect can ripple back when diligently offered. Before departing, the inspectors stamp tablets with vermilion seals, certifying the night's survey. The seals gleam in lantern light, symbols of an authority both protective and burdensome. You bow deeply, thanking them for their diligence, even as your spine aches from the posture. Courtesy greases the gears of governance. You learn to wield it as deftly as any tool. As they disappear down the ridge path, you stand alone a moment longer. Dawn's first hint brushes the eastern clouds with pale gold. You inhale the mingled scents of water, fresh mud, and cooling lantern oil. The inspection has passed without incident, yet fatigue settles into your bones. You allow yourself a moment of gratitude that the Paddy endured, that your family's planning held steady. Then you turn homeward, footsteps light despite the hour, ready to snatch a brief rest before the day's tasks resume. On the way, you rehearse how you will summarize the inspector's comments for the Goningumi. Clear memory now means fewer worries later. You vow to write every detail before sleep claims you again. Once home, you plan to brew the healer's fatigue remedy, not as indulgence but as armor. A clear mind will help the community interpret tonight's data without fear. Your father listens to your report, nodding thoughtfully while mending a rake handle. He suggests inviting the inspectors to watch the next irrigation cleaning, believing transparency breeds leniency. Each recommendation finds its way onto a wooden tablet, shallow lines carved so the notes survive damp weather. The tablet will hang in the storehouse as a reminder when memories blur. Before resting, you walk the paddy edges once more, this time in daylight. Sunlight reveals impressions left by inspectors' sandals, a physical trace of scrutiny that will fade with the next wind. You breathe deeply, letting the remaining tension drain into the soil. After recording inspection notes, you brew millet porridge laced with ginger for the household. Sharing it reinforces the notion that surviving scrutiny is a communal achievement. Dawn blooms fully by the time carts creak onto the road, rice sacks secured beneath straw mats. You walk beside the oxen, hand resting on the wooden yoke, feeling the animal's steady warmth seep through the polished grain. The road curves between cedar groves and terraced fields, its surface worn smooth by generations of tribute journeys. Mist clings to the valley, blurring distant mountains into gentle silhouettes. Each footfall on packed earth feels like a heartbeat echoed from your ancestors. Before departure, you double-check each cartwheel, tightening wooden pegs, listening for cracks. The practical ritual steadies your breathing and ensures the journey begins with confidence. The caravan's pace is unhurried. Bells hang from the oxen's necks, chiming softly with each step. You match your breathing to the rhythm, inhaling as the bell swings forward, exhaling as it settles back. The sound calms the nervous flutter in your chest. Delivering tax rice to the castle town always tightens your stomach, yet the road's familiar beauty loosens the knot. Along the way, pilgrim shrines stand at regular intervals. You pause at one, offering a handful of rice grains and a whispered prayer for safe passage. The shrine's wooden statue of Jizo wears a faded red bib. recently washed by local children. You touch the stone base, cool beneath your fingers, and imagine the blessings flowing back along the road to your village. The moment reminds you that the path serves both obligation and devotion, intertwining the two so thoroughly that separation seems impossible. As the caravan approaches the river crossing, you hear the distant clatter of hooves. A procession of samurai approaches, lacquered palanquins glinting in sunlight. Their lords travel toward Edo for the latest cycle of Sankin-Kotai, guarded by armored retainers whose armor plates flash like fish scales. You and your companions step aside, bowing deeply. Dust swirls, but the samurai move past with practiced indifference, their world overlapping yours only through the movement of rice and loyalty. Once the road clears, you resume walking. Conversation turns to life in the castle town. Some speak of the bustling markets where merchants exchange rice for coin, silk, and ideas. Others recall the last time they glimpsed the daimyo's castle, its layered roofs rising above white walls. You listen, piecing together images of a place that consumes your labor yet remains distant. The castle town is both magnet and maw, drawing in the harvest while promising stability in return. Midday finds you resting beneath a stand of willows. You open a bamboo tube of barley rice mixed with pickled plum, savoring the tart sweetness. The meal is simple, yet eating it on the road feels luxurious. A traveling monk joins your group, sharing news of distant temples and recounting tales of peasants petitioning for tax relief during the Kyoho famine decades ago. He speaks of courage and hardship, of officials moved by the sight of gaunt villagers. His words linger, reminding you that even within rigid structures, voices can reach higher ears. Back on the road, the sun climbs higher. Heat beads on your brow, but a breeze from the river cools you occasionally. You pass tea houses serving weary travelers. Owners call out gentle offers of roasted tea and sweet bean cakes. Though your coin purse is light, you share a small purchase with fellow carriers. The sweetness sticks to your teeth, a pleasant reminder that kindness can emerge even in commerce. As afternoon deepens, the castle town appears. First, you see watchtowers piercing the skyline, followed by tiled roofs and fluttering banners bearing the daimyo's crest. Your heart quickens. The town's outer moat glistens, reflecting clouds and swallowtails swooping low over the water. Guards inspect your papers at the gate, glancing at the seals verifying the rice's origin. Their expressions remain impassive, yet you sense curiosity in the way their eyes linger on your mud-streaked calves. You keep your gaze respectful, offering the prepared phrases of greeting. Inside the town, streets bustle with artisans and merchants. The smell of soy sauce brewing mingles with charcoal smoke from blacksmiths' forges. You guide the cart toward the domain storehouse, wheels rumbling on stone pavement. Along the way, you glimpse silk merchants arranging bolts of cloth, children chasing each other with paper fans, and officials striding in stiff robes. The scene dazzles, yet you remain anchored by the knowledge that your task is to deliver rice and return with what remains for your family. A storyteller at the corner recites the latest news from Edo, how scholars debate calendar reforms, how theaters premiere new kabuki plays. You cannot stay to listen, but the cadence trails after you like perfume, hinting at worlds where stories travel faster than rice carts. At the storehouse, workers weigh each sack, confirming counts against the ledger you watched fill last night. The process feels like a mirror reflecting your village's efforts back to you through the eyes of town clerks. They note the rice's quality, nodding in approval at the lustrous grains. Payment comes not in coin but in tallies applied to future obligations, an invisible currency of loyalty. You accept the receipt with a bow, knowing this exchange underpins your village's safety. After unloading, you take a brief walk along the castle town's moat. Lanterns float on its surface, guiding patrol boats. Merchants shout final offers before shutters close. You pause near a bridge where travelers from different provinces share news. One mentions new irrigation techniques in Kaga, another speaks of shrine festivals in Kyoto. Their words swirl around you, adding broader hues to your understanding of the world beyond rice furrows. You pocket these fragments of knowledge, intending to recount them beside your own hearth. When the day's business concludes, your group lodges at a humble inn. Tatami rooms overlook a small garden where carp swim lazily beneath lotus leaves. You wash road dust from your feet, relish a bowl of hot miso soup, and stretch your weary back. The city's clamor fades behind the paper walls, replaced by the rustle of bamboo and the murmur of travelers sharing stories. You fall asleep thinking of home, grateful the journey passed without mishap, aware that tomorrow you begin the road back carrying gifts of salt, paper, and news. When the caravan finally wheels back into the village, the afternoon sun has softened to honey. Children run beside the carts, counting bundles and crowing over the salt blocks as if they were treasure. You guide the oxen into the square, easing the yoke from their shoulders while neighbors ply the animals with handfuls of chopped straw. The sound of their satisfied chewing becomes a gentle drumbeat under the chatter of reunion. Households gather to receive their portion of supplies. Instead of reciting inventories, you invite each family to touch the goods, to feel the weight of lamp oil tins and the smooth grain of the new spindle shafts. The tactile moment lets gratitude move at the pace of a sigh. Headman's wife keeps notes in a narrow ledger, occasionally pressing your wrist to steady the ink while she records who received extra cloth for mending. Her touch says thank you more clearly than words. After the distribution, you and the other carriers brew a pot of roasted tea in the square. Steam rises from the cups, curling into the amber light. Stories flow between sips. The market gossip you overheard about Edo theaters, the monk's reminder that petitions gain strength when accompanied by precise ledgers, the charcoal seller's opinion that villages with calm caravans enjoy better prices. Each tale drifts outward and settles over listeners like a shawl. When twilight approaches, you carry the remaining gifts thread, salt, lamp oil to households who could not leave their beds. A widow with stiff knees runs her fingertips across the salt block, marveling at its solidity. You promise to return tomorrow to help grind a portion into powder. Another neighbor asks to hear about the castle moat, and you describe how the water mirrored the clouds at midday. The description draws a smile that lingers even after you step back into the dusk. Later, in your own home, the family lays the new spool of thread on a woven mat and simply looks at it together. The thread gleams pale blue in the lamplight, proof that patience can transform into tangible comfort. You unwind a short length and tie it around your wrist as a reminder to stretch abundance carefully. Night settles gently. Exhaustion clings to your limbs, but so does pride. You copy the road notes into the household ledger, adding a section that documents acts of kindness offered along the way, free tea from a roadside inn, a shared meal with fellow carriers, a scribe in the castle storehouse who complimented your handwriting. Finally, you step outside to watch the embers in the brazier fade, knowing the road has given more than it has taken this time. Before sleep, you spread the receipts across the tatami and arrange them in the order you visited each post town. The layout creates a paper map that glows softly in the lamplight. You trace the route with a fingertip, acknowledging each hill climbed and each bridge crossed, letting gratitude settle onto every stop. A final note enters the ledger, a reminder to deliver a story from the castle town storyteller at the next children's gathering. Knowledge, you write, is another parcel worth carrying home. Before extinguishing the lamp, you write a brief note in your travel ledger describing the road conditions and market prices. These details will guide next season's journey. The habit feels empowering. Even as a peasant, you craft a map of knowledge for those who follow. The small gifts purchased with precious coins, salt blocks, a spool of thread, a packet of lamp oil rest beside your bedding while you vow to distribute them with ceremony when you return. They are ordinary items, yet, in your village, they will sparkle like treasure. The night breeze slips through the inn's lattice, carrying distant temple bells. You drift toward sleep, envisioning the faces that will light up when you unpack these humble riches. Before the sun fully rises, you guide the oxen back onto the road, the cart lighter, yet your heart heavier with longing for home. Frost clings to grasses, crunching softly beneath wheels. By midday, You share rice balls with fellow carriers beneath a cedar, comparing notes on which bridge planks need repair. You promise to inform the headman so the next journey runs smoother. Late afternoon reveals your village's outline against the hills. Children run to meet the caravan, laughter ringing clear. You hand them a paper fan purchased with spare coins. Their delight is worth the careful budgeting. As the cart creaks into the courtyard, your family greets you with steaming tea. You present the gifts one by one, savoring each gasp and smile. The salt will season soups all winter. The thread will mend coats before frost deepens. Night settles, and you record final notes: distance walked, kindness received, lessons to carry forward. Travel's fatigue dissolves into gratitude that the road both challenged and welcomed you. Back in the village, evening settles with a hush heavier than usual. Elders gather near the temple steps, and you join them carrying a lantern whose light trembles in the breeze. Tonight is set aside for remembering the famine years, an annual ritual that keeps vigilance sharp. Everyone sits on low stools, facing the altar adorned with simple offerings: millet cakes, pickled radish, and bundles of dried herbs once rationed to stave off hunger. The smell of incense mingles with the earthy scents, evoking memories you inherited before you were born. An elder begins by recounting the Kyoho famine of 1732, describing how locust swarms devoured rice heads, leaving stalks bare. His voice carries the cadence of a storyteller who has repeated these tales so often that they live in his bones. He speaks of villagers grinding acorns, of temple granaries opened reluctantly, of the way children learned to savor each grain as if it were a jewel. You listen, heart aching for ancestors you never met, yet grateful their endurance paved your own path. He passes around a pouch of roasted soybeans, inviting each listener to eat one slowly. The simple act honors those who had none. You bite down carefully, letting the flavor linger, understanding that mindfulness transforms a humble bean into remembrance. Another elder, her hair silvered like frost, recalls the Tenpo famine and the unrest it stirred. She describes families abandoning fields to seek work in Osaka, the price of rice climbing beyond reach, the domain officials balancing compassion with fear of disorder. She pauses to note that historians still debate the precise causes of the Tenpo uprisings. Some blame climate shifts, others accuse merchant hoarding or bakufu mismanagement. She shrugs gently, acknowledging that truth might reside in the overlap. The admission feels like a softening, an invitation to hold complexity without losing hope. She passes around a cloth bundle filled with dried burdock root, explaining how its bitterness cleansed weakened bodies. You chew a slice, letting its earthy flavor ground you. She instructs the younger listeners to memorize where such roots grow along the streambed, ensuring the knowledge cannot be confiscated. Stories slide into practical lessons. Elders remind everyone to maintain seed reserves, to cultivate hardy crops like sweet potatoes and buckwheat, to keep lines of communication open with neighboring villages. You jot notes in your mind, mapping out where your family might expand the kitchen garden. The advice is specific. Dry radish greens thoroughly to avoid mold. Store miso in smaller jars so it lasts longer. Keep a ledger of foraged foods to track which seasons offer what. Each tip feels like a talisman, small but potent. Between speakers, you study the faces illuminated by lantern flame. Wrinkles trace maps of endurance. Eyes shimmer with memories both tender and fierce. You realize these gatherings do more than share cautionary tales. They stitch you into a lineage of listeners who turn pain into preparedness. The recognition fills you with quiet pride, as though you can feel the ancestors' hands resting on your shoulders. An elder hands out small bundles of rice straw tied with colored threads, each representing a task: inspecting granaries, recording seed stores, checking neighbors quietly. You receive a bundle dyed blue, signifying responsibility for monitoring irrigation channels. The tangible assignment steadies you. Action counterbalances fear. Between stories, a monk intones verses meant to console restless spirits lost during those famines. The chant is low, repetitive, and soothing, weaving a cushion beneath the painful memories. You close your eyes, letting the sound wash over you. Images rise, parched fields, gaunt faces, determination shining through exhaustion. The monk's voice seems to offer each image a gentle place to rest, assuring them they are remembered. When the chant ends, you notice tears shining on several cheeks. No one hides them. Sorrow here is shared openly, so it does not harden into isolation. You brush your own eyes, surprised by the warmth that follows release. By afternoon, you and the younger children walk to the stream armed with baskets and the elders' instructions. Together, you learn to spot the burdock leaves with serrated edges, the ones that thrive near the mossy stones. Each child repeats the shape and color aloud, turning the lesson into a sing-song that the stream seems to echo back. You mark a nearby tree with a discreet notch, a silent sign for future walks. Returning to the temple courtyard, you spread the day's gathering on reed mats. Sunlight warms the earth under your knees as you slice the roots into thin coins. The scent is sharp, almost peppery, and it fills the courtyard with a wakeful tang. Elders nod approvingly while recounting how such preparations once saved entire streets. Their approval threads through you like silk. As dusk hints at its arrival, you help store the dried herbs and burdock slices in labeled ceramic jars. Each jar receives a strip of cloth dyed in a different color. A code agreed upon by the healer and the headman: violet for digestion, green for fever, indigo for strength. The system feels like a secret alphabet protecting the village. Villagers share personal mementos. One woman produces a wooden spoon carved by her grandfather while sheltering in a temple during the 10 poor years. Its handle is worn smooth, and she passes it around so each person can feel its weight. When it reaches you, you press it against your palm, absorbing the quiet resilience embedded in its grain. Another neighbor displays a patchwork blanket sewn from scraps of clothing worn during famine, each square representing a story of survival. As the evening deepens, the conversation shifts to gratitude. People name the things that sustained their families: a hidden spring that never ran dry, a merchant who extended credit, a midwife who stayed despite hunger. You contribute your own gratitude for the knowledge passed down, for the communal memory keeping vigilance alive, for the rice currently filling your storeroom. The list becomes a litany, soft and steady. An elder leads a slow song, the melody descending like gentle rain. The lyrics describe lanterns guiding relatives home during scarcity, a promise that no soul wanders alone. Voices join, imperfect yet harmonious. You sing quietly, feeling your lungs expand with borrowed courage. The headman concludes the gathering by outlining the village's current contingency plans. He mentions the communal granary inventory, the schedule for checking irrigation channels, and the arrangement with a neighboring domain to exchange barley for salt if crisis arises. His tone is firm yet gentle, ensuring everyone feels both the gravity and the reassurance of preparation. You inhale, feeling the plan anchor itself within you. He also designates pairs to visit widowed households quietly, verifying that their stores and firewood piles remain sufficient. Compassion, he reminds everyone, is as critical as grain. You volunteer for the task, already plotting the warm words you will carry alongside extra bundles of straw. Before leaving, each person lights a slender candle and sets it afloat in the temple pond. The flickering lights drift like tiny boats, illuminating koi fins beneath the surface. You watch your candle glide among the others, winking in and out as breezes stir the water. The sight eases the tightness that the stories awakened. While famine tales carry weight, the floating lights remind you that remembrance can illuminate rather than paralyze. Kneeling to touch the pond's edge, you let your fingertips tingle from the cold. Ripples spread outward, carrying your silent promise to stay vigilant without surrendering to fear. The water reflects your face alongside ancestors' lanterns, merging past and present into a shared shimmer. Walking home, you notice how the night sounds louder. Crickets chirp, a dog barks far off, the wind rustles through bamboo. You carry the spoon's memory, the elders' voices, the monks' chant. They accompany you like invisible companions. When you reach your doorway, you bow toward the darkened fields, promising to heed the lessons etched tonight. You sleep with renewed vigilance, yet also with the comfort of shared memory guarding your dreams. Before entering, you tie the blue straw bundle to the doorway, a subtle reminder of your new duty. The fibers sway gently, catching moonlight like a quiet banner of resolve. Lingering on the threshold a moment longer, you listen to elders down the lane discussing plans to rotate seed guardianship. Their voices blend with the rustle of bamboo, promising that vigilance will continue in gentle shifts rather than burdensome leaps. Inside, the family gathers around the spoon and patchwork blanket displayed during the meeting. Each person touches the artifacts respectfully, as if reaffirming vows. You suggest creating a small shelf by the altar to hold such reminders year-round. Everyone agrees, and you make a note to carve the shelf during the winter lull. Inside, you spread a mat on the floor and lay out the seed packets you will inventory at dawn. Careful preparation feels like a lullaby for the mind. The household ledger opens beneath your hand to record the tasks assigned tonight, noting who will check granaries, who will inspect irrigation gates, who will visit widows. The neat columns reassure you that vigilance can be organized without haste. Before sleeping, you mix roasted barley with dried burdock in a clay jar, creating a tonic to share during tomorrow's labor. The scent of earth and grain mingles, promising strength. Only then do you allow the lantern to dim. You lie down knowing that fear has been shaped into plans, and plans into peace. A resolution forms. Teach the children how to identify burdock leaves come spring, turning cautionary tales into afternoon lessons along the stream. A few nights later, festival drums echo over the Paddies, muffled by distance yet insistent enough to stir your feet. Obon has arrived, offering a brief suspension of relentless duty. You dress in your patched but carefully pressed yukata, tying the sash with deliberate slowness. Stepping outside, you inhale the mingled scents of pine smoke, incense, and sweet soy glaze. Lanterns hang from bamboo poles, their paper sides painted with scenes of cranes and moonlit rivers. They sway gently, casting a warm glow that smooths every furrowed brow. At the village square, dancers move in a circle around a raised platform. The drummers atop it beat a measured, steady rhythm that feels like a heartbeat you can follow without effort. You slip into the rotation, joining neighbors whose faces glisten with sweat and smiles. Your arms lift, hands tracing patterns your grandmother taught you. Each gesture honors the ancestors believed to visit during this season. The movements are simple yet profound, asking you to link past and present through muscle memory. Between songs, you share sips of cold barley tea with friends, laughing softly about missteps from festivals past. The banter is gentle, more about shared history than teasing. Children dart between adults, clutching paper fans shaped like carp. Their laughter rings like silver bells, light and infectious. You catch your youngest brother attempting to mimic the dance steps, his small feet pounding slightly out of time. You guide him gently, adjusting his grip on the fan, teaching him to slide rather than stomp. He beams, proud to join the grown-ups' rhythm. The moment warms you deeper than sake ever could. Nearby, women tend a stall offering grilled river fish brushed with soy and mirin. The sizzling aroma drifts through the crowd, mingling with the floral scent of freshly cut lilies arranged at the altar. You purchase a skewer, sharing it with your father. The fish flakes easily, its savory richness contrasting with the sweet glaze. Eating it under lantern light feels like a rare indulgence. You savor each bite, mindful of the work underpinning even this joy. A troupe of traveling performers sets up a small stage, unrolling painted backdrops that depict mountain vistas. They play shamisen tunes soft enough not to disrupt the dancers, offering a gentle interlude. One performer recites a humorous poem about a farmer who falls asleep during tax accounting only to dream of rice stalks arguing over who worked hardest. The crowd chuckles quietly, and you laugh too, appreciating how humor can nest within reverence without breaking the night's spell. The shrine priest leads a procession carrying a portable shrine, its carved phoenix gleaming by lamplight. Villagers bow as it passes, hands pressed together in gratitude. You join the bow, feeling a surge of connection to the countless nights this ritual has repeated. The portable shrine sways gently, believed to house ancestral spirits returning home. The idea comforts you. Perhaps your grandparents walk beside you tonight, admiring the lanterns and the way you keep their traditions breathing. A circle of elders sits nearby, tapping wooden clappers in a pattern that guides the dancers' steps. They invite you to try, and you take a seat, letting the rhythm travel through your palms. The steady beat anchors the swirling lights, giving the festival a heartbeat you can hear and feel. Music shifts to a slower tempo. Flutes weave a lilting melody over the drumbeat, and dancers respond by softening their steps. You notice how even the most stoic farmers smile, their eyes crinkling at the corners. For a few precious hours, the relentless ledger of obligations pauses, replaced by an accounting of joy: how many lanterns float, how many hands join, how many memories glow. In a quiet corner, a storyteller unfolds a silk scroll depicting the legend of a peasant who outwitted a greedy tax collector by offering a lantern bright enough to reveal hidden injustices. The tale draws laughter and nods, a gentle reminder that wit can accompany toil. You lean against a wooden pillar, letting the story wash over you, its playful moral tucked inside soothing cadence. As night deepens, families guide lanterns toward the river, setting them adrift to lead ancestors back to the spirit realm. You kneel at the bank, the damp earth cool beneath your knees, and light a lantern painted with rice stalks. Whispering a prayer, you release it onto the water. The lantern floats away, its reflection doubling the glow. Watching it drift, you feel your chest lighten. The burdens of the week recede, replaced by gratitude for this shimmering respite. Fireflies join the lanterns, their natural light flickering among the man-made glow. Children clap softly, convinced the insects are ancestors waving farewell. You smile at the thought, choosing to believe it too. The scene feels like a tapestry woven from light, sound, and shared breath. Sitting at the edge of the square with sandals dangling above the packed earth, you watch generations interact. Elders teaching dance steps to teenagers, toddlers toddling with hands outstretched toward lantern poles, merchants offering complimentary sweets to widows. The festival becomes a living map of relationships, each exchange sketching lines of care. Observing it fills you with a tranquil certainty that community is your greatest inheritance. Eventually, the drums quiet. People bow toward the shrine and begin tidying the square, sweeping stray leaves, collecting ash from incense burners. You help fold the platform banners, their fabric warm from the night's energy. Carrying them back to storage, you sense how ritual blends labor with celebration. Even in rest, work continues, but it feels lighter when colored by music and laughter. Lingering to help a widow extinguish lantern wicks, you dip them into a bowl of water scented with citrus peel. She thanks you by sharing a story of her first obon after marriage, when shyness kept her at the edge of the dance. The memory glows in her voice, and you realize that joy, once kindled, can endure for decades. Walking home, you keep the lantern's afterglow in your mind. The road, usually shadowed, appears luminous with remembered light. You tuck that brightness into your heart, knowing tomorrow's tasks await, yet confident that the memory of dancing with ancestors will accompany every step. At home, you place a tiny lantern charm beside the altar, promising to relight it during the bleakest winter night. The keepsake becomes a spark held in reserve. Soot brushed from the brazier, you set aside a portion of sweet soy glaze to flavor tomorrow's porridge, extending the festival's warmth into everyday routine. A note goes into the communal festival log describing the laughter of children and the moment the portable shrine swayed under moonlight. Future generations will read the entry and understand how joy once glowed here. Finally, you rinse your hands in water scented with chrysanthemum petals, letting the coolness seal the evening's calm into your skin. At dawn the next day, echoes of drums still hum in your muscles. You sweep lantern ash into a pouch to scatter in the fields, believing the joy will fertilize next season's seedlings. Neighbors exchange leftover sweets and trade observations about the clearest stars. You tuck each comment away like beads on a string, ready to revisit when nights grow long. A short poem on scrap paper describes lantern light folding into morning mist. The words feel unpolished yet sincere, and you tuck the poem behind the altar for the ancestors to read. Later, you help dismantle the festival platform, stacking boards carefully so they age well. Each plank receives a pat of thanks before being stored. Drumsticks, wrapped in cloth, scented with cedar, slip into a chest, a quiet promise to keep rhythm alive for the next celebration. A private vow follows. Practice the dance steps weekly, even without drums, keeping the ancestors' rhythm alive in the hush of ordinary evenings. Another evening finds you walking toward the edge of the village where the healer lives. Her garden flourishes behind reed screens, leaves shimmering in the late dusk. She greets you with a nod, eyes bright despite years of tending to aches and ailments. Tonight, you deliver a basket of barley in thanks for her tending your father's back. In return, she offers knowledge, perhaps the most valuable exchange in a place where official edicts often overlook practical survival. The path winds past a bamboo grove where wind chimes fashioned from seashells clink softly. Their song calms you, preparing your heart to receive new learning. You pause to touch one shell, cool and smooth, marveling that something from distant shores now guards a humble healer's fence. Beside the fence, you notice drawing gourds painted with protective kanji. The healer explains that travelers gifted them after recovering from fevers. Their faded characters shine faintly, each stroke a testament to reciprocity. Following her along narrow paths lined with shiso, mugwort, and angelica, you breathe in fragrances that mingle into a calming tonic for the mind. She pauses to show you how to pinch leaves without harming the stem, reminding you that respect keeps the garden generous. Her voice is low, nearly a whisper, mindful of edicts restricting unauthorized medicine. You both know the domain prefers remedies purchased from approved vendors, yet the healer's garden keeps the village healthy when coin is scarce. Inside her hut, bundles of drying herbs hang from the rafters like small paper lanterns. She lays out ingredients on a lacquered tray: dried orange peel for digestion, powdered licorice root for coughs, ground deer antler saved for extreme exhaustion. You watch carefully, committing proportions to memory. She encourages you to prepare a salve yourself, guiding your hands as you grind sesame oil with herbs in a mortar. The scent blossoms, warm and earthy, filling the room with therapeutic promise. She demonstrates how to test the salve by dabbing it on the inside of your wrist, waiting for warmth to spread without irritation. The instruction adds another layer of confidence. Knowledge here is always accompanied by safeguards. As you work, she shares stories of how knowledge travels. Pilgrims visiting the temple from other provinces trade recipes discreetly, tucking notes into prayer scrolls. Merchant wives offer tips in exchange for household textiles. Even soldiers returning from Edo bring tales of doctors experimenting with Dutch anatomical texts. The healer smiles at the idea that information can slip through cracks in official walls, nourishing those willing to listen carefully. She reminds you of the Tokugawa edict posted last spring, the one warning that unauthorized remedies will invite fines and temple inspections. The memory of that parchment inked with stern characters still pricks your skin. You ask how she keeps the officials satisfied, and she taps the bundle of coded notes tucked inside a flower jar. Boil patience with ginger when frost lingers. Grind quiet courage with plum pits when lungs grow tight. The phrases mean little to an outsider, yet every villager who visits learns to read between the lines. Conversation turns to the latest domain decrees. Officials recently warned against herbal concoctions sold without permits, citing concerns about quackery. The healer acknowledges the risk, yet she insists that communal care cannot wait for distant approvals. She advises you to keep written notes hidden within the family account book if inspectors arrive. The recipes dissolve into the sea of rice tallies. Her eyes twinkle with mischief, reminding you that resilience sometimes wears the face of quiet rebellion. She shares a story about treating a traveling woodcutter who sprained his ankle on the mountain road. Officials questioned her methods until the man returned to service ahead of schedule, singing her praises. The tale turns cautionary, as she notes that gratitude can be as dangerous as suspicion if it draws too much notice. You file the lesson away, resolving to spread admiration discreetly like incense smoke exhaled indoors rather than in open courtyards. She demonstrates ankle wrapping on your own leg, guiding cloth in overlapping figure eights. The careful pressure reminds you that healing blends art and geometry. She hands you a small packet of powdered herbs meant to ease fatigue. The packet is wrapped in paper, decorated with brushstrokes resembling flowing water. She instructs you to dissolve a pinch in hot water before dawn chores, warning not to overuse it, lest your body grow dependent. You bow deeply, understanding the trust placed in your hands. Wisdom like this does not travel far unless carried carefully. Before you leave, she invites you to sit on the veranda. Fireflies hover above the herb beds, their lights reflecting in a nearby pond. She shares a cup of ginger-infused tea, its heat curling through your chest. The healer speaks about balance, how bodies like fields require rotation and rest. She urges you to take occasional pauses to lie flat on the earth and listen to your heartbeat match the soil's pulse. Her words land softly, yet they root deeply. In return, you offer news, describing the inspector's recent visit, the festival's joy, the elders' famine warnings. The healer nods, weaving the information into her understanding of the village's well-being. She mentions that she prepares offerings for the shrine guardian, hoping to keep officials' curiosity away from her hut. You promise to deliver herbs discreetly to neighbors who need them, ensuring the garden's value circulates quietly. She hands you a scrap of paper illustrating pressure points along the spine. You study the tiny ink dots, committing the sequence to memory before feeding the paper to the brazier, letting smoke carry the secret skyward. As you depart, she slips a sprig of plum blossoms into your basket, explaining that their scent soothes worry. You tuck it beside the herb packets, appreciating the gesture. The night air feels cooler, yet your heart warms with gratitude. The knowledge you carry now complements the ledger of obligations, a parallel system of care that sustains your community beneath the watchful eyes of authority. Back home, you dry the plum blossoms near the hearth, watching their petals curl gracefully. You label the packets using subtle marks only your family understands. The small act feels momentous. Within those folds of paper rests the ability to lift exhaustion or calm fever, gifts more potent than coin. You store them beside the altar, trusting that ancestral blessings will guard them. A plan forms for which neighbor will receive the first dose, a widow whose hands tremble after long weaving sessions. The thought of easing her weariness sweetens the night. Walking home, you rehearse the instructions silently so they remain fresh. The stars emerge, scattering silver across the dark. You glance toward the temple, whispering thanks for the healer's courage. When you reach your doorway, you hide the packets among bundles of dried tea leaves. The secret blends seamlessly into domestic order, a reminder that hope often hides in plain view, tended by steady hands. Before sleep, you grind a final pinch of herbs into powder, labeling it with a discreet mark that only your family deciphers. Preparedness rests not only in abundance, but in clarity. The healer's advice settles into memory like a treasured verse, and you resolve to review it at each new moon so the knowledge stays sharp. At dawn, you brew a thin tea with the healer's blend and deliver it to the widow whose hands tremble. She breathes in the steam, eyes moist with relief. Her response goes into a small notebook hidden inside a rice jar, tracking which remedies soothe which pains. Data becomes another form of compassion. As morning unfolds, you distribute sprigs of plum blossom to neighbors, framing them as talismans rather than medicine to avoid suspicion. Their grateful smiles assure you the garden's secrets remain safe. A promise follows to help the healer catalog her seeds before winter deepens, ensuring every plant's story survives. Knowledge, like medicine, thrives when tended collectively. That evening, you sketch simple drawings of each herb in the margin of your ledger, labeling them with nicknames that hide their true purpose. If inspected, the drawings will appear as harmless botanical practice. Each plant receives a marked season of peak potency, the lunar month inked beside its nickname, so future you will thank this foresight when fatigue dulls memory. A small satchel containing charcoal, parchment and spare twine hangs at your hip, so the healer can record field observations when she visits bedridden villagers. It feels like a portable clinic resting against your hip. Autumn wind sweeps through the village, stirring fallen leaves into small whirlwinds. With it comes rumor, carried by a peddler who traded needles for millet. He speaks in hushed tones about peasants in a distant domain drafting a petition to protest crushing taxes. The tale slips through the village like incense smoke, threading into conversations at the well, the granary, the temple courtyard. You feel it brush against your thoughts, igniting a blend of curiosity and caution. That evening you sit by the threshold, chiseling a bamboo stake for the garden, letting the task steady your mind. Each shave curls away like a worry released. You realize that rumor alone cannot guide action. It must be anchored in understanding. At dusk, members of your Goningumi gather in a storage shed, away from prying ears. The room smells of dried straw and ink, familiar scents that usually soothe. Tonight, they sharpen your senses. You all crouch close, sharing the peddler's story. The petitioners, he claimed, invoked the spirit of Sakura Sogoro, the legendary farmer who sacrificed himself for tax relief. His name hangs in the air, luminous and heavy. You recall the tales your elders told of his courage and the price he paid. A candle flickers in the draught and the headman shields it with his palm to keep the flame steady. The gesture mirrors his role, guarding fragile hope while winds of rumor gust around you. The headman listens silently, fingers drumming lightly on his knee. When he speaks, his voice is careful. He reminds everyone that petitions carry risk if rejected. Punishment can fall on entire villages. Yet he also acknowledges that the burden of alternate attendance levies, drought recovery, and market fluctuations has grown. His honesty feels like a door opening slightly, allowing the breeze of possibility to slip inside. The idea weighs in your heart. Images form, farmers kneeling before officials, scrolls unfurling with respectful pleas, the tension of waiting for judgment. You also picture the worst outcomes: arrests, confiscated fields, families shattered. The dual vision makes your stomach flutter. You glance at your younger siblings through the open doorway, their laughter floating in as they chase each other. Their carefree play reminds you of what is at stake. The group debates quietly. Some argue that loyalty demands endurance. Others insist that loyalty includes speaking when the burden grows unsustainable. You contribute a memory from the Famine gathering how elders emphasized preparation and collective action. You suggest drafting a respectful inquiry rather than a full protest seeking clarification on tax adjustments promised during recent inspections. The idea gains murmured support, a cautious compromise between silence and rebellion. One elder retrieves a keepsake from his sleeve, a bead carved from cherry wood, said to have belonged to Sakura Sogoro himself. Whether the legend holds fact matters less than the reverence in the elder's hands as he passes it around. When the bead rests against your palm, it feels warm despite the chilly shed. You silently promise to match the courage it symbolizes with prudence, honoring sacrifice without courting needless danger. Someone produces a strip of paper, jotting down key points, the reduced yield from flood damage. The expenses of maintaining roads for the daimyo's retinue, the community's commitment to fulfilling obligations if given manageable terms. The words are measured, humble, yet firm. You help phrase sentences to maintain respect while conveying urgency. Each stroke of the brush feels like tapping on a drum, summoning courage in a rhythm everyone can follow. Before dispersing, the group decides to consult the temple priest for guidance. He has navigated domain officials before, and his counsel can shield rash impulses. You volunteer to accompany the headman at dawn. The decision brings both relief and responsibility. You recognize that your voice now carries weight beyond your household. Outside, the wind continues to rustle through the persimmon trees. You stand beneath their branches, watching orange fruit sway against the indigo sky. The sight calms you. Persimmons ripen slowly, demanding patience. Petitions may require the same. You resolve to move deliberately to ensure every action considers the safety of the most vulnerable. That night, sleep comes fitfully. Dreams flicker with images of scrolls, official seals, and your village's faces. You wake periodically, listening to the wind against the shutters. Each time you remind yourself of the healer's advice. Breathe with the earth, find balance. Eventually, your heartbeat steadies, and you rest, holding both caution and hope close. During one wakeful moment, you rise to light a single stick of incense for Sakura Sogoro, letting the smoke curl toward the ceiling as a promise to wield wisdom alongside bravery. Morning reveals frost glinting on the thatch roofs. You walk to the temple with the headman, the petition draft tucked inside his sleeve. The priest welcomes you with tea, his eyes kind yet discerning. He reads the proposed words, nods, and suggests adding references to loyal service during past crises. His revisions transform the draft into a petition that honors tradition while voicing present needs. You feel gratitude deepen. Wisdom shared freely is a form of shelter. Before you depart, the priest retrieves the ancestral petition mentioned the night before. The parchment smells faintly of cedar, its edges protected by silk. Together you read lines describing floods, loyal labor, and respectful pleas for relief. The script flows like water. You trace a character drawn by a forebear, feeling a bridge stretch across generations. The priest smiles, remarking that ink can be as persistent as river stones when wielded by sincere hearts. As you leave the temple, the wind has calmed. Sunrise paints the Paddies with pale gold. You sense that the path ahead remains uncertain, yet you also feel the strength of collective resolve. Petition or not, your village holds together, ready to face whatever judgment arrives. The wind carries your silent promise to protect them, not through reckless defiance but through thoughtful courage. The priest's suggestions slip into your sleeve beside the cherrywood bead, both objects warming against your skin. They thrum like twin pulses, heritage and guidance, steadying you for the days ahead. Back home, you set inkstone and brush on the low table, ready to draft the petition copy in the morning light when thoughts are clear. Preparation becomes a lullaby for vigilance. A final promise slips toward the household altar, assuring the ancestors that courage here will remain measured, never reckless. When dawn arrives, you grind ink slowly, letting the steady motion align your breathing. Words flow respectful yet firm, echoing the priest's counsel. After drafting, you invite two neighbors to review the language. Together you adjust honorifics and clarify requests, ensuring the petition reads like loyal guidance, not defiance. The final scroll dries beneath a paperweight carved with plum blossoms. You feel the weight of potential change balanced by the calm of collective effort. When the headman arrives, you present the scroll with a bow. He traces the characters, nodding approval, then tucks it into his robe to deliver discreetly. A tremor of anticipation runs through you, but it is gentler than fear. A stick of incense flares and the smoke braids upward, sending your hopes along unseen currents toward the domain. Twice you murmur the names of villagers whose burdens press hardest, asking the smoke to carry their stories with the petition. The Goningumi gathers quietly at noon to hear you read the petition aloud. Their attentive silence wraps the room like padded armor, shielding doubt. After the reading, each household adds a fingerprint in diluted ink to the back of the scroll, not a signature, but a misted affirmation that unity supports every brushstroke. The blotches resemble petals fallen from a plum tree, scattered yet belonging to the same branch. That evening you compose a calm message for neighboring villages, describing the respectful tone of the petition and inviting them to share their own experiences quietly through the temple network. Words are chosen carefully, like stepping stones placed across a stream. You end the note with a blessing for steady harvests and honest officials, sealing it with rice paste before entrusting it to the traveling monk. Before the headman departs, you touch foreheads briefly, a gesture of solidarity learned from your grandmother. The contact says what words cannot. Winter edges closer, and dawn arrives later, brushing the sky with soft peach before revealing frost-silvered fields. You wake before the temple bell, breath clouding the air as you wrap a cloak around your shoulders. Stepping outside, you feel the earth firm beneath your sandals, the mud of summer replaced by crisp ridges that crunch quietly. The village lies hushed, roofs dusted with rime. Smoke curls from a few chimneys, thin ribbons promising warmth within. The perimeter of your fields receives careful footsteps as you check straw covers protecting winter greens. The frost sparkles like scattered rice grains, a reminder that beauty can rise even over hardship. You pause at the irrigation gate, now slowed to a trickle, and listen to water murmur beneath ice. The sound soothes you. It assures you that life continues below the surface, resting but ready. Across the ridge, a neighbor waves, his breath puffing into the cold. You join him to inspect stacked bundles of firewood, testing each for dryness. Together you discuss the best way to store kindling away from drifting snow, laughing softly at memories of past winters when mischievous children used the piles as forts. The conversation warms you as surely as the exertion, proving that camaraderie can dissolve the chill that seeps through layers of cloth. As the sun emerges, temple bells toll, their resonance carrying across the valley. You bow toward the sound, aligning spine and breath with each deep note. The ritual grounds you, linking present effort to ancestral cadence. You whisper a pledge to meet the day's tasks with patience, to honor the lessons of famine tales, inspections, festivals, and whispered petitions. Every experience this season has layered itself into your muscles like rings in a tree. Back at the house, the family gathers around a pot of morning porridge, enriched with the healer's herbs. Steam fogs the room, and the savory smell lifts everyone's mood. You watch your siblings eat, grateful their cheeks remain round with health. Your father reports that the petition will be delivered discreetly through the temple network, a path deemed safest. Hope flickers, modest yet real. You accept it cautiously, like holding a small flame in winter wind. After breakfast, you join neighbors to repair winter shelters for livestock. Hammers tap in steady rhythm, and jokes drift through the frosty air, gentle humor about slipping on ice, about missing the summer's frogs. Work feels lighter when shared. You note the way breath plumes from mouths mingling into a communal cloud that dissipates slowly, as if reluctant to leave your company. During a break, the headman distributes charcoal sticks for marking feed levels. You carve a notch on the stall post corresponding to each bundle stacked, creating a visual promise that animals will not go hungry. Midday brings a brief respite. You sit on an upturned bucket near the barn, watching snowflakes begin to fall, each one dissolving on contact with sun-warmed sleeves. You unwrap a rice ball filled with salted plum, savoring its sharp, sweet taste. A traveling charcoal seller stops to share news of distant mountain passes, describing how snow there piles higher than temple roofs. His stories make your own frost seem gentle, and you feel grateful for the relatively mild valley winds. In the afternoon, you mend fishing nets stored for spring, fingers weaving twine with patient attention. The repetitive motion pairs well with quiet conversation shared with a neighbor who dreams of teaching his daughter to read. You promise to lend your primer when the rice transplanting eases. Later, you visit the barn once more, confirming that rice reserves remain secure. You run fingers along the sacks, whispering thanks for the grain that will see you through to spring. The barn smells of straw and stored sunlight. You imagine the ancestors who kept watch before you, their vigilance making this moment possible. You promise silently to hand the duty forward to the next generation unbroken. In the afternoon, the headman convenes a brief gathering to announce news. The domain has acknowledged the petition, promising to review quotas after the next survey. No guarantees are offered, but the response arrives without punishment. Relief flows through the crowd, a collective exhale. You feel your shoulders drop, tension melting like frost under sun. The possibility of a gentler season gleams on the horizon. Your mother suggests weaving extra straw sandals while hope holds steady. You sit together near the doorway, plaiting rice straw into durable soles. The repetitive motion lulls you, and conversation drifts to dreams for spring, perhaps adding a row of indigo plants, perhaps teaching the youngest to read sutra characters. Each idea unfurls like a bud beneath snow, tentative yet vibrant. As dusk settles, you step outside to align bamboo windbreaks. The sky blushes violet, and the first stars appear. You whisper the names of the constellations your grandmother taught you, anchoring the coming night in familiar light. After the chores settle, you take a lantern to the hill overlooking the Paddies and stand beneath bare persimmon branches. Snow begins in earnest, flakes spinning like downy feathers. Each one melts against your cheeks, leaving tiny trails of chill that wake every sense. You listen to how the snow hushes the world, muffling footsteps, softening the barn's creak. In that silence, you hear distant temple bells from another village, proof that your community's rhythm joins a wider chorus. Upon returning home, you set the lantern near a basin and watch the snowmelt drip from its frame. Drop by drop, it fills the bowl, and you vow to use the water in tomorrow's tea so the taste of this tranquil night lingers. The gesture is small, yet it binds the present to the morning yet to come. As twilight returns, you carry a bundle of rice straw to the shrine, offering it in gratitude. The priest lights incense, and you watch the smoke spiral upward, carrying prayers toward unseen guardians. You add your own silent words. Thanks for community, for the resilience braided into each day's chores, for the quiet joys that punctuate hardship. Night settles softly. Inside your home, you unroll bedding beside the hearth, now stacked with split logs. The fire crackles, casting shadows that sway like dancers. You reflect on the path you have walked, from twilight-irrigated fields to ledges, Goningumi vows barn vigils, pilgrim roads, famine memories, festival lights, secret gardens, cautious petitions. The journey has been demanding, yet each step held a thread of comfort woven by companionship, tradition, and hope. Sleep edges closer. You close your eyes, imagining the Paddies resting under winter's cover, preparing quietly for spring. You sense the village breathing in unison, a chorus of gentle snores and murmured dreams. Wrapped in blankets, you surrender to rest, trusting that dawn will come again, and with it the chance to continue enduring with grace. Earlier, you set a charcoal mark on the pillar, tallying days until planting. The slow accumulation of strokes comforts you. Progress may be quiet, yet it remains certain. Before surrendering to sleep, you place tomorrow's work gloves near the door so dawn finds you ready. Small gestures ensure morning begins without scramble. Ears attuned to the wind skimming the eaves, you count breaths until it settles. Each breath becomes a bead on the rosary of endurance. Morning will bring new frost, but also the comfort of familiar routines, the crackle of kindling, the chatter of neighbors at the well, the sturdy rhythm of hoe against soil. Knowing this, you let sleep carry you gently. In your dream, the Paddies shimmer like polished mirrors, reflecting constellations that promise gentler seasons ahead. You wake briefly, smiling, before drifting back into warmth. When morning finally arrives, you step outside to greet the frost with steady breath. The world feels reset, like parchment ready for new ink. A low bow greets the horizon, promising to write the new day with strokes of patience and care, no matter how cold the ink may feel. A soft hum escapes as you straighten, a tune your mother once used to greet the dawn. The melody threads into the morning mist, stitching your promise to the waking sky. Before the frost melts, you sweep the veranda, letting the broom's whisper become a morning mantra. You plan seed rotations in your head, matching crops to soil like friends paired for a journey. Inside, you sketch a simple calendar on a scrap of paper, assigning tasks to each waxing moon, ditch clearing, tool sharpening, shrine offerings. Order becomes a blanket against uncertainty. A letter to your cousin in Edo forms beneath your brush, sharing news of the petition and the healer's herbs. You seal it with rice paste and set it aside for the next merchant caravan. Before sealing the letter, you tuck inside a pressed chrysanthemum petal from the festival lanterns, trusting the color will lend courage to the cousin far from home. The gesture reminds you that distance can be bridged with careful tokens. Chalk lines note the Goningumi assignments on a small board near the door, ensuring everyone who visits knows when to check irrigation or granaries. Visible plans soothe winter nerves, and now the fields are only shadows, and the lanes are only lines of quiet between houses. Let the water wheel turn without you. Let the last small tasks wait for morning. Breathe in the smell of wood smoke and clean straw, and breathe out the weight of ledgers, names, and numbers. Feel how the night makes gentler shapes of every worry wider, softer, farther away. You did enough for today. You are safe, and you are warm. Close your eyes, drift with the slow hum of the room, and rest. Good night.